The stolen shuttle screamed through space toward the human colony station. New Horizon hung like a silver wheel against the darkness, its lights blinking in steady rhythm as shifts changed and ships came and went. Inside the shuttle, a young Xyloth girl named Kirasis gripped the controls with trembling hands that sparkled faintly with natural crystal formations running along her pale blue skin. She had never flown anything before today. The docking bay loomed ahead, and she realized too late that she was coming in much too fast. Metal shrieked against metal as the shuttle crashed through the outer doors and skidded across the landing platform, throwing sparks in every direction. Alarms erupted throughout the station. Security teams rushed toward the wreckage with weapons ready, while emergency crews stood by with fire suppression equipment. The shuttle's door hissed open, and Kirasis stumbled out, her left arm hanging at an odd angle, and purple blood seeping through her clothing. A dozen rifles pointed at her small frame. "Don't shoot," she said in heavily accented human standard, her voice high and desperate. "Please, I need help. My mother is dying." The security chief, a broad-shouldered woman named Martinez, held up one hand to keep her team steady. "How did you get past our perimeter?" Martinez demanded. "I stole a shuttle from the trading post," Kira said, swaying on her feet. "I disabled the tracking system like the maintenance video showed. I had to reach humans. You're the only ones who can help." A medical team arrived with a hovering stretcher. Dr. Sarah Chen pushed through the crowd, her dark eyes taking in the injured child with practiced assessment. She was the station's xenobiologist, one of the few humans who had extensive experience with non-human physiology. "She needs immediate treatment," Sarah said, moving toward Kiris. "Despite her injuries." "No, not yet. You have to listen first," Kiris said. "If I let you fix me, everyone will just send me home. Please, just listen." Sarah crouched down to the child's eye level. "I'm listening," she said gently. "Tell me what happened." Kiris reached into her torn jacket with her good hand and pulled out a small holographic projector. Her fingers shook as she activated it. The image that appeared made several humans gasp. A Xyloth woman lay on a medical platform, her body partially transformed into living stone. The crystallization had consumed her legs entirely, spreading up through her torso in veins of gray and white mineral. Her face was still mostly organic, but one cheek had begun to harden, and her eyes held terrible awareness. "This is my mother, Malis," Kira said, her voice breaking. 3 weeks ago she explored a forbidden zone for her research. She's a xenobotanist. She was collecting samples. The hologram shifted to show microscopic spores, each one a tiny crystalline structure. "These infected her," Kira's continued. "The medical conclave calls it stone sleep. They say there's no cure. They've tried everything for 3 weeks, but they can only slow it down." She looked up at Sarah with desperate eyes. "I searched every database I could access, every species in the galactic community. Only humans have ever reversed crystalline petrification." Station Commander Rodriguez had arrived and stood listening with arms crossed. He was a practical man who didn't like complications. "We're not doctors for your species," he said, not unkindly. "Even if we wanted to help, we don't have the knowledge." "But you do," Kira's insisted. 70 years ago on Mars colony, human miners reversed silicate poisoning. The medical journals say it was impossible, but you did it anyway. Sarah's eyes widened, slightly. She remembered reading about that case during her training. The miners had been exposed to exotic silicon compounds that began replacing their organic tissue. Standard treatment had failed until a frontier medic tried something desperate and unorthodox. "That was different," Sarah said carefully. "Those were humans. We knew our own biology." "Please," Kiris whispered. "The Conclave has already performed the death rituals. They've given up. But the records say humans don't give up. You try impossible things." She pressed a data chip into Sarah's hand. "Everything about my mother's condition is here. All the scans, all the treatments they tried. You have 8 days before the crystallization reaches her brain, and even if we stop it, she'll be locked inside stone forever. Captain Marcus Webb stepped forward from where he'd been watching. He was a former Earth military medic who now worked station security. Weathered face held understanding that went beyond medicine. "Commander, we should at least look at this," Marcus said. "The kid flew across who knows how much space by herself, stole a shuttle, crashed it here. That takes guts." "It also takes desperation," Rodriguez countered. "We can't involve ourselves in every alien medical crisis." Kira swayed again, and this time she couldn't catch herself. Sarah moved fast, catching the girl before she hit the deck. The child's injured arm was badly broken, and she'd lost more blood than Sarah had initially thought. "Get her to medical now," Sarah ordered. The team moved in with the stretcher, but Kira fought weakly against them. "Promise me," she gasped. "Promise you'll try. Promise you won't just send me back." Sarah looked at Rodriguez. The commander's jaw worked silently for a long moment. He'd been in command of frontier stations for 20 years. Follow protocol and when to trust his gut. Something about this desperate child reminded him of why humans had reached for the stars in the first place. "We'll investigate," he said finally. "Dr. Chen, assemble a team, review the medical data. If there's even a chance we can help, we'll discuss next steps." Relief flooded Kira's crystalline features before pain and exhaustion dragged her under. Sarah rode with her to medical, studying the girl's unconscious face. Xyloth children had the same vulnerability as human kids, despite their crystalline biology. The same need for their parents. The same desperate hope when facing loss. In medical, Sarah handed the data chip to the station's AI for analysis, while the automated systems began treating Kira's injuries. The holographic displays filled with information about Mollus's condition. Sarah had seen a lot of strange alien biology in her career, but this was different. Crystallization pattern was elegant in a horrifying way, spreading through the Xyloth woman's body with mathematical precision. It was converting organic crystal into inert mineral, essentially turning a living being into a statue, one cell at a time. Marcus arrived with coffee and stood beside her. "What do you think?" he asked quietly. "I think this is probably impossible," Sarah admitted. "The Xyloth have been spacefaring for thousands of years. Their medical science is far more advanced than ours in most areas." "But," Marcus prompted. Sarah smiled slightly. "But that Mars colony case wasn't solved by better technology. It was solved by a medic who looked at the problem sideways, who tried something nobody else thought to try." She pulled up the relevant files from 70 years ago. The frontier medic had used controlled thermal variation and induced cellular stress to force the silicate compounds out of the body. Dangerous and desperate, and it had worked. "We'd be flying blind," Sarah said. "Xyloth biology is only partially understood by us. We could kill her trying to save her. Or she dies anyway and a kid loses her mother," Marcus said. He'd seen enough death in his military service to know that sometimes you had to try. Rodriguez entered the medical bay and looked at the data displays. "How long to review everything?" he asked Sarah. 48 hours minimum to understand what we're dealing with," she replied. "Do it," Rodriguez decided, "and prep the persistence for launch. If we're going to attempt this, we need to be where the patient is." He looked down at Kira's, still unconscious on the medical platform. "Let's see if human stubbornness can beat alien medical science," he said. Sarah began assembling her team while Marcus made preparations for the journey. None of them knew if they could actually help. All knew they had to try. That was what made them human. The persistence cut through hyperspace toward the Xyloth quarantine world. The human vessel was small, compared to the massive Xyloth medical ships they would encounter. But it was fast and well-equipped for frontier medicine. Dr. Sarah Chen sat in the medical lab, surrounded by holographic displays showing Mollus's condition from every angle. Kiras stood beside her, arm now properly set and healing. The girl hadn't left Sarah's side for more than a few hours since waking. Your mother's biology is beautiful, Sarah said, studying the scans. The way crystalline and organic structures work together, it's like nothing on Earth. That's why the stone sleep is so terrible, Kiris explained. Our bodies use crystal for strength and communication. We grow it naturally like you grow bone. But these spores turn that gift into a curse. She pulled up a molecular diagram. They hijack our natural crystallization process and accelerate it. Without the organic balance, my mother is essentially growing herself to death. Sarah nodded slowly. And your medical conclave has tried suppressing the crystal growth. For 3 weeks, Kiris confirmed. They use inhibitors that slow our natural processes, but it only delays the inevitable. The spores adapt faster than the medicine can. Captain Marcus Webb entered carrying simulation results from the ship's computer. His expression was grim. I ran combat medical scenarios based on what we know, he said. The numbers aren't good. If we follow Xyloth treatment protocols, the patient has maybe 6 days left. What if we don't follow their protocols? Sarah asked. Marcus raised an eyebrow. That's what I was hoping you'd say. I pulled up that Mars colony case again. The solution there was counterintuitive. He displayed the old medical records. The frontier medic didn't try to suppress the silicate poisoning. He induced controlled exposure to force the body to purge it naturally. Kira's eyes widened. You made it worse to make it better? Essentially, yes, Sarah said. But that was human biology. We understood the mechanisms. With your mother, we'd be guessing. The ship's AI chimed a warning. Approaching Xyloth space, diplomatic channels opening. Commander Rodriguez's voice came through the intercom. Dr. Chen, we've got incoming transmission from the quarantine facility. They're not happy we're coming. The main view screen activated, showing a Xyloth physician with elaborate crystal formations growing from his temples. His expression radiated cold disapproval. I am Chief Physician Talmor, he said. You are not authorized to enter this medical space. Human interference is not welcome. Rodriguez stepped into view of the camera. We're responding to a request for medical assistance, he said calmly. Request was issued by proper authority, Talmor replied. The child acted without permission or understanding. Kiros pushed forward. I have legal authority as direct family. Xyloth law allows me to seek outside consultation. Talmor's crystal formations seemed to darken. Child, your mother is beyond consultation. We have done everything possible. To allow primitives to experiment on her is cruelty. Sarah felt anger flash through her, but kept her voice level. With respect, Chief Physician, we've reviewed your treatment protocols, and we believe there may be alternatives you haven't considered. You've been a spacefaring species for barely 200 years, Talmor said. We've been practicing medicine for 10,000. What could you possibly offer that we haven't already attempted? Marcus spoke up. A fresh perspective, sometimes being new to a problem is an advantage. Ignorance is not advantage, Talmor countered, but will allow you to observe. Perhaps seeing your limitations firsthand will satisfy the child, and she'll accept reality. The transmission ended. Kiris looked shaken. He's already given up on her, she whispered. A lot of people give up too soon, Marcus said. I've seen it in combat medicine. Once doctors decide something is impossible, they stop looking for solutions. Sarah put a hand on Kiris's shoulder. We haven't given up. Let's see what we're really dealing with. The Persistence docked at the quarantine facility 3 hours later. The Xyloth medical station was pristine and elegant, all smooth crystal surfaces and soft blue lighting. Talmor met them at the airlock with 2 assistant physicians. His manner was coldly polite. The patient is in isolation chamber 7, he said. You may observe through the protective barriers. Direct contact is forbidden. For examination, Sarah said. Absolutely not. The spores are highly infectious. We cannot risk contamination. We have full biohazard protocols, Marcus insisted. Talmor's expression hardened. You will observe or you will leave. Those are your options. Kira started to protest, but Sarah squeezed her shoulder gently. Let's start with observation, Sarah said. They followed Talmor through corridors lined with other quarantine chambers. Each held Xyloth patients in various stages of crystallization. Some were nearly complete statues. Others were just beginning the transformation. It was a gallery of medical failure. Chamber 7 was larger than the others. Malice lay on a platform in the center, surrounded by monitoring equipment that hummed softly. Sarah's breath caught. The holographic images hadn't fully captured the horror of it. Malice was 73% crystallized now. Were completely stone. Her torso mostly converted. Only her head and one arm retained significant organic tissue. But her eyes were open and aware. She was conscious, trapped in her own transforming body. Mother! Kira's pressed against the barrier. Malice's eyes moved toward her daughter, but she couldn't speak. The crystallization had affected her vocal structures. She can still hear and understand, Talmor said quietly. That's perhaps the cruelest aspect. Consciousness remains until the very end. Sarah studied the medical readouts. The crystallization pattern was spreading in waves from multiple points of origin. This isn't random, she said. The growth has mathematical structure. Of course, Talmor replied. The spores are creating a network, converting the host into a transmission medium. For what? Marcus asked. The chief physician hesitated. We don't know. The spores are remnants from an ancient war. Their original purpose was lost millennia ago. Sarah moved closer to the barrier, examining the crystal formations. Something about the pattern nagged at her. Captain Webb, look at this progression, she said. Marcus studied the scans. His combat medic training had taught him to read patterns in chaos. The asymmetry, he said suddenly. It's not spreading evenly. Irrelevant, Talmor dismissed. The end result is the same. No, he's right, Sarah insisted. Look at the neural pathways. The crystallization is actively avoiding complete shutdown of her consciousness. She pulled up comparative data. If this was just runaway crystal growth, her brain would have been affected first, because that's where your species has the highest concentration of natural crystal structures. But it's deliberately preserving neural function, Marcus continued, like it wants to keep her aware. Talmor frowned. That's an interesting observation, but it doesn't change our prognosis. We cannot reverse the process. Sarah's mind raced. What if you're not supposed to reverse it? What if you're supposed to complete it? That would kill her, Talmor said. Or transform her, Sarah countered. What if these spores aren't trying to kill, but to preserve? What if they're creating a stasis state? Pure speculation, Talmor said. Based on what evidence? Based on what I see, Sarah replied. Your treatments have been trying to suppress the crystallization, fighting against it. That creates internal conflict in the patient's system. She gestured at Malice. What if instead of fighting it, we guide it, complete the transformation in a controlled way, then reverse it safely? Talmor stared at her. That is the most absurd proposal I've ever heard. You would deliberately finish what's killing. We do something similar with induced hypothermia on Earth, Marcus said. We've brought people back from clinical death by carefully controlling the process. This is nothing like that, Talmor protested. Kiris looked between them. Would it work? She asked Sarah. I don't know, Sarah admitted. But I think your standard treatments are actually making this worse. The suppressants are creating a war inside your mother's body. She met Talmor's eyes. You've been treating this like a disease. What if it's something else? What if it's a mistaken attempt at preservation? The chief physician was silent for a long moment. Even if your theory has merit, we don't have the technology to safely complete and reverse full crystallization. It's never been done. You don't have the technology, Sarah said quietly. But we might. Human nanite systems could map and control the process on a cellular level. pH. Nanites. Talmor's crystal formations flared brighter. Those are banned by most civilized species. Too unpredictable, too dangerous. But effective, Marcus said. Rodriguez had been listening through the comlink. Dr. Chen, are you seriously proposing we use experimental nanite therapy on an alien patient with a condition we barely understand? pH. Sarah looked at Ma less, conscious and aware in her stone prison. I'm proposing we try something instead of watching her die, she said. The Xyloth way has failed. Maybe it's time for the human way. pH. Talmor turned away. The Conclave will never approve this. It's too risky, too unproven. The Conclave already declared her dead, Kirasis said. They performed the rituals. They gave up. She looked at Talmor. But I haven't. And as direct family, I can authorize experimental treatment. The chief physician's shoulders sagged. Fail. The political consequences will be severe. It could be seen as an act of aggression. If they don't try, my mother dies anyway, Kira said. I choose hope. Males's one mobile hand moved slightly. Her fingers traced symbols in the air. Talmor's expression shifted. She's giving consent, he whispered. She agrees to let them try. Sarah felt the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders. They had 72 hours before the crystallization became irreversible. She needed to develop a completely new treatment protocol for an alien biology, using technology most species considered dangerous. Let's get to work, she said. The human team worked through the night in a converted lab space the Xyloth reluctantly provided. Sarah stood before a massive holographic display, showing Males's complete biological structure, down to the molecular level. Engineer James Park hunched over a workstation, his fingers flying across controls as he modified nanite programming. Marcus reviewed medical protocols from every desperate field operation he'd ever studied. We're essentially proposing controlled death and resurrection, Sarah said, rubbing her tired eyes. That's putting it mildly, James muttered. We're talking about introducing human-designed nanites into a crystalline alien biology we only partially understand, then using them to complete a lethal transformation before somehow reversing it. When you say it like that, it sounds insane, Marcus admitted. It is insane, Sarah said, but it's the only path forward I can see. Framework they'd been developing. Stage 1. Introduce nanites to map the complete crystallization network. We need to understand exactly what the spores are building. Stage 2. Instead of suppressing the spores, we accelerate them in a controlled pattern, Marcus continued. We guide the crystallization to complete the transformation without causing fatal fractures. Stage 3. Apply thermal variation to create micro-stress points, James added. The heat cycling will make the crystal structure more malleable. Stage 4. Neural shutdown, Sarah said quietly. We essentially flatline her consciousness to protect it during the reversal process. Stage 5. Use the nanites to deconstruct the crystal matrix from the inside, while simultaneously supporting tissue regeneration, Marcus finished. The three of them stared at the plan. This is the most reckless thing I've ever proposed, Sarah said. I've seen field medics do crazier things, Marcus replied. But those were humans. We knew what we were working with. Kiras entered the lab carrying cups of a Xyloth beverage, similar to coffee. She'd barely slept either. Chief Physician Talmor is asking for an update, she said. He wants to present your plan to the Conclave observers. Tell him we're still refining the protocol, Sarah said. The truth was, she had deep doubts. Every simulation they ran showed catastrophic failure points. The margin for error was essentially zero. Dr. Chen, Kira said softly, do you really think this can work? Sarah met the girl's desperate eyes. I think it's possible, but possible and probable are very different things. That's more hope than the Conclave gave me, Kira said. James stood up from his station. I've got a problem. Our medical nanites aren't designed to interface with crystalline matrices. They're built for carbon-based organic tissue. Can you modify them? Marcus asked. Maybe, but I'd be guessing at the parameters. One wrong calculation and they could shred her remaining organic tissue. Sarah moved to his workstation. Show me what you have. They worked together for hours, Sarah providing biological parameters, while James translated them into nanite programming. It was delicate work, requiring both precision and intuition. We're treating medicine like engineering, James said. Or engineering like art, Sarah replied. We can't calculate our way to certainty. We have to feel it. Marcus paced the lab, his combat medic instincts troubled by the unpredictability. In field medicine, you act fast with what you have. But this isn't a battlefield emergency. We have time to get this right. We have 60 hours, Sarah corrected. That's not time. That's a ticking bomb. Concerned. We've got a situation. The Xyloth Conclave has sent 3 warships to observe. They're demanding regular updates and threatening to intervene if they deem the procedure harmful. Intervene how? Marcus asked. By removing Males from our care, by force if necessary. Sarah felt frustration building. We're trying to save her life. They see it as experimentation on a dying patient, Rodriguez said. The political pressure is intense. Several conclave members are calling this human arrogance. Kira sees crystal formations along her arms, flared with emotion. My mother is not a political issue, she's a person. I know, kid, Rodriguez said gently, but we have to work within their system. Talmor arrived moments later, with 2 conclave observers. The observers were older Xyloth with extensive crystal formations that indicated high rank. The conclave requires a full presentation of your proposed treatment, Talmor said. His tone was formal, but Sarah detected underlying stress. Sarah activated the holographic display and walked them through each stage of the procedure. The observers listened with expressions of growing horror. This is barbaric, one observer said. You propose to deliberately complete the transformation that's killing her. We propose to control it, Sarah countered. Your suppression treatments create internal conflict. The spores are fighting your medicine. The patient's body is caught in between. You presume to understand Xyloth biology better than our own physicians, the second observer said. No, I presume to see it from a different angle, Sarah replied. Human medicine is younger, less refined, but sometimes a fresh perspective reveals options that expertise has overlooked. Marcus stepped forward. I've seen this in combat situations. Experienced surgeons sometimes miss solutions because they're locked into established protocols. A field medic with less training but more desperation tries something unconventional, and it works. Medicine is not combat, the first observer said. Isn't it? Marcus challenged. You're fighting for a patient's life against an aggressive condition. Sounds like combat to me. Talmor spoke up. The human approach does have theoretical merit. The crystallization pattern does suggest the spores are attempting preservation rather than destruction. You support this madness? The second observer asked. I support exploring every option, Talmor said carefully. Our methods have failed. Perhaps it's time to acknowledge that. The observers conferred in rapid Xyloth that the translation systems struggled to follow. Finally, the first observer spoke. The conclave will allow you to proceed, but with conditions. Name them, Rodriguez said, monitoring any sign of excessive harm, and we terminate the procedure immediately. Agreed, Sarah said. Second, you will accept full responsibility for failure. If the patient dies, there will be diplomatic consequences. Rodriguez's jaw tightened, but he nodded. Third, Chief Physician Talmor will directly observe and has authority to intervene. Talmor looked surprised, but accepted. We agree to your conditions, Sarah said. The observers left, and the team returned to their preparations. James worked furiously on the nanite programming, while Sarah refined the treatment sequence. Marcus drilled them on emergency protocols for every possible complication. Kira sat with her mother, holding the one hand that could still feel touch. She whispered to Malice in their native language, telling her about the humans who were trying impossible things. In the lab, Sarah's doubts grew with each simulation. 17 critical points where failure meant death. They'd need perfect timing, flawless execution, and considerable luck. "I'm not sure we can do this," she admitted to Marcus during a brief break. He was quiet for a moment. "In my first combat deployment, I had to perform surgery in a collapsing building under enemy fire," he said. "The textbook said it was impossible. The conditions were wrong. The patient was too injured. I didn't have the right equipment." "What happened?" Sarah asked. "I stopped thinking about all the reasons it couldn't work and focused on making it work anyway. The patient lived." He looked at her steadily. "You're thinking like a scientist when you need to think like a frontier medic. Stop calculating odds and start trusting your instincts." Sarah nodded slowly. "My instincts say this is possible." "Then that's enough," Marcus said. James called them over. "I think I've got the nanite. Programming stable. It's not perfect, but it should interface with crystalline structures without causing damage." "Should," Sarah noted. "That's the best I can give you," James said. "We're in uncharted territory here." Sarah made a decision. "Let's run one more full simulation. If it doesn't show catastrophic failure, we proceed." The simulation took 3 hours. They watched as virtual nanites mapped virtual crystal networks, as controlled transformation completed and reversed. The patient survived, barely. "The margin of error is terrifying," James said, "but it's possible." Sarah looked at the team. "We're committed then. We start the procedure in 18 hours. Everyone gets some rest." "I'm not sure I can sleep," James admitted. "Try anyway," Marcus said. "Tomorrow we attempt the impossible." Kira's found Sarah before she could leave. "Dr. Chen, why are you doing this?" the girl asked. "Don't know us. We're not your species. You could ignore this and face no consequences." Sarah thought about all the reasons. Scientific curiosity, the challenge, professional pride. But the real answer was simpler. "Because you asked for help, and you believed we could provide it," Sarah said. "Because sometimes the right thing to do is also the hardest thing. Because I became a doctor to save lives, not to calculate acceptable losses." She smiled at the young Xyloth. "And because I have a feeling about this, a feeling that humans are supposed to try the things others have given up on." "That's what my research said," Kirasis replied. "That humans are stubborn and optimistic in equal measure. That you attempt impossible things, and sometimes succeed through sheer determination." "Let's hope that reputation is deserved," Sarah said. She tried to sleep, but her mind kept running through the procedure. 17 critical failure. 72 hours until irreversible crystallization. One desperate child hoping for a miracle. Sarah had never felt more aware of the weight of responsibility. Tomorrow, they would either prove that human medicine could achieve the impossible, or they would kill a patient while the entire Xyloth conclave watched. There was no middle ground. She finally drifted off, thinking about all the frontier medics who had faced similar choices throughout human history. The ones who tried desperate procedures when conventional medicine failed. Some succeeded and became legends. Others failed and were forgotten. Tomorrow she would find out which kind of story this would be. The medical chamber hummed with tension as the human team made final preparations. Malice lay on the platform, now 81% crystallized. She had hours left before reaching the point of no return. Sarah checked the nanite injection systems for the third time, while Marcus reviewed emergency protocols with the Xyloth medical staff. James monitored the control station, where he would guide the nanite swarm through its complex choreography. Talmor stood to one side with the conclave observers, his crystalline features unreadable. Kiros held her mother's hand, whispering final words of encouragement. "The nanites are ready," James reported. "All systems are functioning within parameters." Sarah moved to Malice's side. The Xyloth woman's eyes followed her with desperate hope. "We're going to try something that's never been done before," Sarah said gently. "It's going to be difficult and frightening. We can bring you back." Malice's fingers squeezed weakly in understanding. "Beginning stage 1, Sarah announced. "Nanite injection in 3, 2, 1. James activated the system. Billions of microscopic machines flowed into Malice's body through injection points carefully positioned throughout her remaining organic tissue. The nanites were programmed to seek out the crystalline network and map its structure. On the holographic displays, a three-dimensional model began to form. What they saw made everyone in the room catch their breath. The crystal network was far more complex than any scan had revealed. It branched through Malice's body in patterns that were almost beautiful, creating intricate pathways that connected every part of her biology. "Those aren't random growth patterns," Sarah said. "That's organized structure." James zoomed in on sections of the network. The nanites are detecting active signaling. The crystals are communicating with each other. "Impossible," Talmor said. "The spores are primitive organisms." "Maybe they were primitive once," Marcus observed. "But look at what they've built. That's sophisticated network architecture." Sarah studied the patterns with growing realization. "They're not attacking Malice. They're trying to interface with her." She pulled up the communication protocols. "Can we decode the signals?" James worked frantically. "I'm running translation algorithms. Give me a minute." The room fell silent except for the hum of medical equipment. Everyone watched as the nanites continued mapping the crystal network. The observers leaned forward despite themselves. "I've got something," James said. "The signals are simple but consistent. They're repeating a pattern that translates roughly to preserve, protect, maintain. They're trying to save her." Breathed. "From what?" Marcus asked. Kira spoke up. "My mother studies xenobotany. She researches dying ecosystems. Maybe the spores detected her concern about environmental damage." Sarah's eyes widened. "These are terraforming organisms, ancient ones designed to preserve and restore environments. They sensed Malice's distress about ecological decay and tried to help." "By turning her into crystal," Talmor said skeptically. "By putting her into stasis," Sarah corrected. "Preservation through crystallization. They don't understand they're killing her, because death wasn't part of their original programming." Marcus understood immediately. "They're confused and damaged, operating on broken instincts." "Which means we can communicate with them," James said. "The nanites can carry signals. We can talk to the spores." The second conclave observer stepped forward. "You're proposing to negotiate with a microscopic infection." "I'm proposing we explain the situation," Sarah said. "The spores think they're helping. We need to show them they're not." She turned to James. "Can you program the nanites to carry a message?" "What kind of message?" he asked. Sarah thought fast. "Something that shows intent, rather than just chemistry, emotions, purpose." The spores responded to Malice's concern about the environment. Maybe they'll respond to her desire to live. Kiris moved closer. "I can help with that. Young Xyloth have stronger crystalline resonance than adults. I can project my feelings through the crystal network." "That could be dangerous," Talmor warned. "My mother is dying," Kira said. "I'll take the risk." Sarah made a decision. "James, modify the nanite programming to carry psychic resonance. We're going to combine human technology with Xyloth mental techniques. That's completely experimental." Observer protested. "Everything we're doing is experimental," Marcus countered. For the next hour, they worked to create a communication protocol that had never existed before. Human nanites programmed to amplify Xyloth's psychic projection. It was engineering and telepathy working together. Finally, they were ready. "Kiris, focus on your mother's presence, on your memories together, on hope and life," Sarah instructed. The girl closed her eyes and placed both hands on her mother's remaining organic tissue. Her own crystalline structures began to glow softly. The nanites picked up the resonance and transmitted it through the network. On the displays, they could see the signals spreading through the crystal formations. The spore's communication pattern changed. Their simple repetition of preserve, protect, maintain became more complex. New patterns emerged. James translated frantically. They're confused. They don't understand why their preservation method is causing harm. Show them, Sarah said to Kira's. Show them that crystallization means death for your people, not preservation. Kira's projected harder. Images flowed from her mind through the network. Memories of her mother alive and moving, laughing and working, teaching and exploring. The contrast with Mollus's current crystallized state was stark. The spore's signals shifted again. They understand, James whispered. They're trying to stop, but they don't know how. The process is too far advanced. Sarah felt a surge of hope. That's why we need stage 2. We help them complete the preservation correctly. Then we reverse it. You want to cooperate with the infection? Talmor said in disbelief. I want to work with confused organisms that mean well, but lack understanding, Sarah replied. We give them a new purpose. We teach them how. Preserve and release. She looked at her team. Stage 2. Controlled acceleration. We're going to finish the crystallization, but guide it to a stable state. Marcus activated the thermal systems. Carefully calibrated heat began flowing through Mollus's body. The remaining organic tissue started to crystallize faster. It was terrifying to watch. Neural activity is declining, a Xyloth medic reported. Mollus's eyes were closing as consciousness faded. Kira's held tighter. Mother, stay with us. Let her go, Sarah said gently. She needs to sleep through this part. The crystallization completed over the next 20 minutes. Mollus became entirely stone, a perfect crystal statue. Her face was frozen in an expression of peace. Kira sobbed quietly. She looks dead. She's not dead. She's in stasis, Marcus said. Her neural patterns are still active, just suspended. 3. Sarah announced thermal variation. The temperature systems began cycling, heat and cold, in carefully programmed waves. The crystal structure began developing microfractures, exactly as planned. The crystal lattice is becoming malleable, James reported. Nanites are moving into position. Stage 4, Sarah said quietly. Neural shutdown. This was the most dangerous part. They had to completely stop Mollus's brain activity to protect it during the reversal. A Xyloth medic administered the neural suppressant. The holographic displays showed consciousness fading to 0. She's flatlined, the medic said. The room held its breath. They had minutes to reverse the process before death became permanent. Stage 5, Sarah said. Deconstruction and regeneration. James, talk to those spores. Give them a new mission. James activated the nanite swarm's final protocol. Network. They transmitted a new message to the spores. Release and restore. The microscopic organisms that had spent weeks building crystal networks now had to tear them down. For a terrible moment, nothing happened. Then the crystal structure began to change. The spores responded to their new instructions, breaking down the crystal matrix they had created. But they needed guidance. The nanites provided it, showing them how to release organic tissue without damaging it. It was a dance between human technology and ancient organisms learning to work together. It's working, James said. The crystallization is reversing. On the platform, cracks appeared in Mollus's crystal shell. Fragments began to fall away. Beneath the stone, organic tissue regenerated. But the process was chaotic. We're losing stability, a Xyloth medic warned. The crystal fracture is spreading too fast. Parts of Mollus's body were breaking down faster than tissue could regenerate. Compensate with the nanites, Sarah ordered. Support the tissue regeneration directly. James redirected the nanite swarm. They flooded into areas where crystal was breaking away, providing scaffolding for new organic growth. It was desperate improvisation. The team adjusted protocols in real time, responding to changes as they happened. This was frontier medicine at its most raw. Neural activity returning, Marcus reported. She's coming back. But Mollus's consciousness was scattered. Her neural patterns fired erratically. She's fragmenting, Talmor said. The shutdown damaged her cognitive functions. Kiris didn't hesitate. She pressed her hands to her mother's partially restored face and projected with everything she had. Mother, I'm here, follow my voice, come back to me. Her crystalline structures blazed with light. Call resonated through the network. Males's scattered consciousness had a beacon to follow. Slowly, agonizingly, her neural patterns began to reorganize. She's stabilizing, Jane said. The crystal continued to fall away. More organic tissue emerged, but it wasn't entirely organic anymore. Fine crystalline traces remained, integrated into Males's biology. The spores hadn't completely left. They'd become part of her. That's not normal Xyloth physiology, an observer said. No, Sarah agreed. But she's alive. Hours passed as the team monitored and adjusted. The transformation finally stabilized. Males lay on the platform, her body a hybrid of organic tissue and integrated crystal. She was breathing. Her heart beat steadily, and her eyes opened. They were different now, reflecting light with an inner crystalline quality. But they were aware, whispered. Her voice carried harmonics it hadn't before. The girl collapsed against her mother, crying with relief. Males's arms, partially crystalline but mobile, wrapped around her daughter. I heard everything, Males said softly. While I was stone, I heard the humans working. I heard the spores learning. I felt everything. Sarah approached cautiously. How do you feel? Males considered. Changed. The spores are still with me, but they're quiet now, cooperative. I can sense crystalline structures around me in ways I never could before. She looked at Sarah with gratitude. You didn't just save my life. You gave the spores a new purpose. Talmor stood motionless, his entire understanding of medicine shaken. This should not have been possible, he said. And yet here we are. Marcus replied. The conclave observers began transmitting reports back to their leadership. The impossible had happened. Ba-P. Humans had succeeded where Xyloth medicine had failed. Not through superior technology, but through audacity, creativity, and refusal to accept defeat. Recovery took 3 days of careful monitoring. Males remained weak, but her hybrid biology stabilized faster than anyone expected. The crystalline traces in her tissue weren't parasitic anymore, but symbiotic. She could sense mineral structures in ways that amazed even the Xyloth physicians. Sarah sat beside her patient's bed, reviewing the medical data with fascination. Your body has essentially created a new form of Xyloth biology, she said. The organic and crystalline elements are working together in unprecedented ways. Males flexed her fingers, watching light reflect through the faint crystal patterns in her skin. I can feel the spores' consciousness, she said. They're primitive, but learning. They understand now that preservation requires balance. What happened while you were crystallized? Sarah asked. What did you experience? Males closed her eyes, remembering. I was aware the entire time, she murmured. Trapped, but conscious. I felt the spores building their network, and sensed their confusion when the Xyloth treatments fought against them. Then I felt your nanites arrive, and everything changed. The spores encountered something they'd never experienced before. Technology that communicated with intent rather than just chemistry. The combination of human engineering and Xyloth's psychic ability, Sarah said. Neither would have worked alone. Exactly, Males agreed. The spores carry genetic memories from their creators, an ancient civilization that used them for planetary restoration. She sat up carefully. They showed me visions while I was in stasis, worlds being healed, ecosystems being rebuilt. But then war came, and the spores were weaponized, corrupted from their original purpose. Kiris entered, carrying nutrition supplements. She hadn't left her mother's side, except when forced to rest. Talking about the Forbidden Zone, she said. Males nodded. It's not a weapon cache. It's a damaged archive. The spores there are the remnants of a terraforming library. Sarah's eyes widened. You mean there's a repository of ancient ecological restoration knowledge? Potentially, yes, Males said. But the Xyloth Conclave sealed it away out of fear. They saw the damage the spores could cause, and never investigated their true nature. Talmor arrived in time to hear this. His expression was troubled. The Conclave acted to protect our people, he said. Sealing the zone prevented countless deaths, and also prevented countless discoveries, Males countered gently. Fear kept us safe, but also kept us ignorant. The chief physician looked at Sarah. Your team's success has created significant discussion in the Conclave. Many are questioning our medical doctrines. That wasn't our intention, Sarah. Perhaps it should have been, Talmor replied. For 10,000 years, we've refined our medicine to near perfection. But perfection has made us rigid. We stopped looking for radical solutions because we believed we'd already found the best approaches. He gestured at Males. You humans are young and reckless, and somehow that gave you the freedom to try what we wouldn't. Commander Rodriguez arrived with news. Dr. Chen, the Conclave wants a formal presentation of your treatment methodology. They're calling it adaptive medicine. They want to learn from us, Sarah said in surprise. More than that, Rodriguez replied. We're getting requests from 17 different species asking for human medical consultations. Apparently word of this success has spread fast. James entered, looking overwhelmed. I've got 43 messages from xenobiologists wanting technical specifications on the nanite programming. This is getting crazy. Marcus laughed. Welcome to being the miracle workers. Over the following days, the medical station became a hub of interspecies collaboration. Xyloth physicians worked alongside human doctors, learning techniques that combined intuition with precision. Sarah found herself teaching seminars on unconventional problem solving. The key is to question your assumptions, she explained to a group of alien medical students. When we examined Males, we didn't see a dying patient with an incurable disease. We saw a person whose body was trying to communicate something. A Xyloth student raised a crystalline hand. But how do you know when to break established protocols? You don't know, Sarah admitted. You make your best judgment based on the situation. Sometimes orthodox medicine works perfectly. Sometimes you need to improvise. Marcus took over. In combat medicine, we have a saying. The one that saves the patient. Textbooks are guidelines, not laws. The Galactic Medical Council sent an official delegation. They were skeptical at first, viewing human methods as dangerously unpredictable. But after reviewing the complete medical records, their tune changed. This shouldn't have worked according to established xenobiology, the council leader said. Yet it did, Sarah replied, which suggests our established understanding is incomplete. The council leader, a dignified alien with multiple sensory organs, studied her carefully. You're asking us to embrace uncertainty. I'm asking you to embrace possibility, Sarah said. Certainty is comfortable, but it can blind us to new solutions. The delegation departed, promising further collaboration. Within weeks, formal treaties were being drafted. The Human Xyloth Medical Research Initiative became the foundation for cross-species medical advancement. The impact went deeper than just medicine. Males's revelation about the Forbidden Zone sparked intense debate in the Xyloth Conclave. Commander Rodriguez found himself in diplomatic negotiations about opening the ancient archive. The humans helped us see our fear was holding us back, a conclave member admitted. Perhaps it's time to investigate rather than simply guard. Kiras attended these meetings with her mother. The young Xyloth had become something of a symbol, the child brave enough to seek help from strangers. I didn't think about politics or protocols, she told a gathering. I just knew humans had a reputation for trying impossible things, for not giving up when others say something can't be done. An elderly conclave member spoke. The child's faith in human stubbornness may have saved more than one life. It may have saved us from our own rigidity. 3 months after the procedure, Males stood before the Xyloth Conclave with Sarah and the human team. They were presenting their proposal to open and study the Forbidden Zone with proper precautions. The spores aren't weapons, Malice explained. They're tools we don't understand. With human technological expertise and Xyloth knowledge of crystalline biology, we can safely explore this archive and potentially unlock terraforming techniques that could restore damaged worlds, Sarah added. The conclave debated for hours. Finally, they voted to allow a joint human-Xyloth expedition. The Forbidden Zone would become a research site instead of a sealed grave. Sarah received an unexpected message from Earth. The United Nations Medical Authority wanted her to establish a new division, Frontier Medicine. You'll have resources to tackle cases other doctors have given up on, the message explained. We want to formalize the approach you pioneered, combining human creativity with alien expertise. She accepted on the condition that her team came with her. Marcus, James, and several Xyloth physicians, including Talmor. We work better together, she explained. Human audacity combined with alien wisdom. Talmor had undergone his own transformation. The rigid physician who initially dismissed human medicine now advocated loudly for medical innovation. I was wrong to assume our 10,000 years of experience meant we had nothing to learn, he told Sarah. Age doesn't guarantee wisdom. Sometimes it just means you've been making the same mistakes longer. Malice chose to join the research initiative. Her unique biology and connection to the spores made her invaluable. I can communicate with crystalline structures in ways no one else can, she explained. The spores taught me that during my time in Stone. She and Kiris moved to New Horizons Station, a program that combined human and Xyloth curricula. I want to study xenobiology like my mother, Kiris told Sarah. But I also want to learn human medicine, the way you see problems differently. Sarah became her mentor. The human doctor and young Xyloth formed a bond deeper than species. One evening, Sarah found Malice standing by an observation window, watching stars. Do you ever regret what happened? Sarah asked. Being infected? Nearly dying? Malice was quiet for a moment. I regret the pain I caused my daughter, she said. But the experience taught me something profound. Sometimes transformation is necessary for growth. She held up her hand, light reflecting through the crystalline traces. I'm not the same person I was. I'm something new, a bridge between organic and mineral life. Does that frighten you? Sarah asked. Sometimes, Malice admitted. But it also excites me. I can perceive the universe in ways I never could before. She looked at Sarah. You humans understand transformation. You've been spacefaring for such a short time, yet you've changed yourselves to survive in new environments. We adapt or we fail, Sarah said. Exactly, Malice agreed. That's why you succeeded where my people's ancient medicine failed. You're not afraid to become something different. The Forbidden Zone expedition launched 6 months later. Human and Xyloth scientists worked together to carefully excavate the ancient archive. What they found amazed everyone. The spores contained genetic libraries for restoring thousands of different ecosystem types, techniques for atmospheric regeneration, ocean purification, and soil restoration. It was a gift from an ancient civilization to the future. They knew they wouldn't survive their war, Malice explained, reading the genetic memories. So they encoded their knowledge in the spores, hoping someone would eventually understand. The Galactic Council officially recognized humanity's contribution to medicine and xenobiology, but the real impact was quieter and more profound. Across the galaxy, doctors began questioning their assumptions. Medical schools started teaching human-style adaptive thinking alongside traditional protocols. The phrase, "let's try the human approach," became shorthand for creative problem-solving. Sarah stood in her new office on Earth, reviewing case files. 47 impossible medical situations from across known space. Each one a puzzle other doctors had given up on. She smiled. "Which impossibility should we tackle first?" she asked her team. Marcus studied the files. "There's a Vortan child with neural degeneration. Traditional treatments aren't working." "Let's start there," Sarah decided. Talmor nodded approval. "The hardest cases first." Very. As they began planning, Sarah received a message from Kirasis. The young Xyloth was top of her class in xenobiology. "Dr. Chen, I've been analyzing the spore archive, and I think I found something. A technique for reversing cellular aging in crystalline species," she said. Sarah felt that familiar spark of excitement. Another impossible problem waiting to be solved. She responded, "Send me everything you have. Let's see what's possible." Commander Rodriguez visited the next day with news. 3 more species are requesting human medical assistance. Our reputation is spreading. "We're going to need more teams," Sarah said. "Already working on it," Rodriguez replied. "The Frontier Medicine Division is becoming the fastest-growing branch of human space operations." He smiled. "Turns out, saving lives is good diplomacy." Years passed and the human approach to medicine became integrated into galactic healthcare. Sarah never forgot where it started. A desperate child crashing a stolen shuttle into a human station. A mother trapped in stone. And a team willing to try what everyone said was impossible. She kept a small crystal on her desk, a fragment from Malessa's crystallization that had fallen away during treatment. It reminded her that sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone isn't certainty. It's hope. The willingness to try, the stubborn human refusal to accept that anything is truly impossible. One evening, Malessa and Kiras visited Earth for the first time. They stood with Sarah on a mountain overlooking the Pacific Ocean. "This is where humans come from," Kiras said in wonder. "A water world with no natural crystal formations." "We had to create our own structures," Sarah said. "Build our own crystalline technologies." Malessa understood. "That's why you saw the spores differently. Have crystalline biology. So you approached it purely as engineering and communication." "We saw a problem that needed solving," Sarah said simply. "Not an inevitable tragedy." Kiras looked at the vast ocean. "You know what I learned from all this?" she said. "What matters most isn't how long you've been trying to solve problems, but whether you're still willing to try new solutions." Sarah put her arm around the young Xyloth's shoulders. "That's the most human thing I've ever heard you say." They stood together watching the sunset. 3 beings from 2 different worlds, connected by the simple belief that impossible just meant nobody had succeeded yet. And in the spirit of humanity, they would keep trying until impossible became possible. Because that's what humans did. They looked at the universe and saw not limits, but potential, not endings, but new beginnings, not death, but transformation. Sometimes, that stubborn optimism was enough to change everything.